Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Infinit-I Boot Camp, day 4. We are so happy to have you with us today. For those of you that have joined us all week long, thank you. Welcome back. Couldn't do this without you. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome. We hope to inform and illuminate and empower you today. So thank you for joining us. My name is Craig Hart. I am with Infinit-I Workforce Solutions in our operations area. With me today, as has been the case every single day, is Mr. Mark Ray, who is an industry advisor with 35 plus years experience in the trucking industry. So welcome, Mark. Good to see you again. Happy Friday.
Yes, sir. It's been quite a workshop. I have page after page, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what some of our clients picked as takeaways. And of course, we've got a fantastic presentation by Laura and the trafficking issue and how we can have an impact. So it's Friday, but here we go.
Absolutely. Now, just some quick housekeeping as a rundown for those individuals who were not able to join us on our previous days or all of our previous days. On Tuesday, we heard from Tony Hoff, the Executive Loss Control Specialist with Napa River Insurance. On Wednesday, we heard from Amber Rodriguez, who is Safety Director with Supreme Auto Transport out of Longmont, Colorado. And then yesterday, we got to experience a deluge of information from Peyton Ing, a partner at Kershaw Anderson, who is a trucking defense attorney. There were so many things that he shared yesterday that I wanted to go through a couple of them here momentarily. And then today we have Laura Cyrus, the Director of Corporate Engagement with Truckers Against Trafficking, here to speak about their program. Now, our format reminder, we're going to have a short session here at the beginning to collaborate. Then we'll bring our speaker on. She will speak for probably the better part of an hour, and then we'll open the floor up to question and answer, followed by a section where we will reflect and look back and also look forward to future events and information that we want to share with you all. As always, this event is powered by our attendees, so we want you to interact with us today. We want you to open up your chat window. Make sure that that is running, so click on chat. Under the to section, click on all panelists and attendees so everyone can see your comments. Let us know who's here today, where you're at, what's your name, and if you have joined us on any of the last 3 days, what is the biggest takeaway that you have that you are excited about that you want to implement with your organizations? Go ahead and get fired up doing that. Sorry here, I'm losing control of my PowerPoint. Also, break out your workbooks. Those were sent out. We do have a day 4 area that is set up for today's presentation. In addition to that, on your email reminder that went out this morning, there were 2 items from Truckers Against Trafficking attached to that email. One was this graphic on the right, which makes a nice poster that can be hung in a common area at any of your facilities that provides basic information on some of the signs of trafficking. And then the toolkit to combat human trafficking. This is probably 18, 19 page PDF. That's a great education tool that Laura, I know, will be talking more about shortly, that can be distributed out to anyone within your organization to make them better informed about trafficking and what to look for. So absolutely take advantage of those 2 items that we sent out today. All right, here. Our daily code word today is going to be the last day that we give out a code word for our drawing for our Amazon Echo Show 8 that is sitting in a box right in front of me of a chair right now. We will announce the winner of that once we have received all the code word submissions. We will do a drawing for that and then announce that in a follow-up email that we will send out about the event. And then the winner obviously will need to let us know where to ship this lovely item so that we can get it to you safely. But we'll get you that code word here before the end of today's session. And then our special offer reminders. On day 1, we offered a 30-day complimentary trial to the Infinit-I Workforce remote training platform so that those of you who have joined us on this call that are not clients of ours, that are not familiar with our platform, have the opportunity to take advantage of it. You can visit the website infinityworkforce.com/complimentary-trial. I'm going to revisit this offer before the end of our session today for a very specific reason, but we'll get there in a little bit. And then our second offer was one unlimited year of cloud-based recruiting ads from bettertruckdrivingjobs.com. And you can visit that link, bettertruckdrivingjobs.com/engage-bootcamp to take advantage of that. Recruiting remains a key issue in this industry. This is 12 months of free ads that you can put out there to attract drivers, customized to your branding, your message, and so forth. So take advantage of that. Every resource right now is invaluable to help with this recruiting challenge. If you have questions about either of these offers, you can email our girl Friday, I guess, when it comes to boot camps, Lindsay Presley, Lindsay who's been on chat with us all week long. That's lindsay.presley@verticalag.com if you have any questions or want to learn more. All right, looking back with Peyton Eng yesterday. Peyton is a trucking defense lawyer, works exclusively defending trucking companies around the country when they find themselves in accidents. And what we had tasked him with yesterday was preparing our audience for depositions. This was a topic that had been requested from our November session, and he delivered. He came in and had some very good, specific information to be able to take back to your teams in terms of preparation. You know, discovery and deposition, Mark, as you pointed out yesterday, that is really the moment where you set the tone for how this defense is going to go. That is a key moment, a pivot point there where it can go, all right, is this going to settle? Is this going to court? Or is this going to go away? And so preparing for this is critical, and that also includes identifying your team members, and of your team members, who is responsible for the various pieces. For example, gathering the documentation that a plaintiff attorney is going to need, preparing the driver to participate in the deposition once the accident has occurred, contacting the lawyer, contacting the insurance company. So this is very critical that you outline who these individuals are now ahead of time. One thing that he said that I wrote down yesterday was, this is chess and you need to pick your chess pieces. We are not playing checkers, so you should put some thought into who you want on your team that is going to function in these roles, obviously outside of the driver, but as your company representative, who is going to be the one that shows up and performs professionally, sincerely, does not violate the various rules that Peyton shared with us. I know we don't want to offer anything that they don't ask. We don't elaborate on anything that they don't ask. We don't volunteer information. We sincere. We answer the question asked. We answer yes or no. Don't be afraid to say no. Mark, I know you've been in depositions. It is perfectly reasonable to say no in these situations. You don't have to agree just because they're smiling.
That's correct. And when you say that, you'll be asked the question again, rephrase, and you can answer no a second time. But getting back to that discovery deposition and preparation for that, the real time to prepare your organization is not after the event, but before you have that crash. Are you ready? Once the crash has happened, you got what you got. So I would certainly encourage everyone to either simulate a nasty crash, simulate a deposition. Am I able to put my hands on the documents I need? Am I ready to give a deposition? The time to prepare for that is before you have that lawsuit or that crash. So, and again, so some of the buzzwords that Peyton described as these are gotchas. They're setting you up for the next question, and here's why they are doing that. I think was absolutely worth lots of money and a trail or a roadmap to making that lawsuit either go away or get settled without having to go to court.
So, and most importantly, you said it, Mark, yesterday. Peyton said it. Save it for the trial. You are not trying the case in the deposition.
That's correct.
Your goal is to set up your company on the best standing going forward in deposition. They want to take it to trial. That's when that is addressed. So critical key point, because sometimes emotions take over and overwhelm good judgment, and we end up saying things that we don't intend to in these depositions.
And that's what the plaintiff is trying to do. It's very, very simple. That's exactly where they want to get you. So anyhow, I would very much encourage everyone to do a little practice deposition. If you want to get a hold of Peyton or myself on how to do that, it's the turning point. It's the deciding factor on a lawsuit, and very much involved in keeping you away from those multi-million-dollar lawsuits.
All right, here. Now our speaker today. Just one quick follow up on that. The replay of day 3 is available on the replay link. We will be providing that at the end of the event. If you have the replay link from yesterday, day 3 is already up there so that you can share that with other members of your team. I don't think it's a bad idea that if you've identified who your deposition team members are and they were not able to participate in the event yesterday, to have them go watch that. Excellent. All right. Well, today's speaker and organization is a bit of a departure from us. A lot of what we have talked about today is how to become, or actually this week is how to become better, safer, more prepared organizations heading into 2021. Truckers Against Trafficking is a bit of a different story. They are a longtime partner of ours. We are an industry support partner of Truckers Against Trafficking and have been for several years because their mission aligns with our corporate mission. Our mission is to provide safer workplaces, but also to translate our values out into the real world in a meaningful way. One of the things we talked about actually just this morning on our internal company call was good people know good people. And that's how we extend our relationships around the world. That's how we feel about everyone who is on this call with us today. This is an extension of that philosophy by exposing you all in attendance to these great minds, but also these super valuable partners that help make the world a better place outside just the sphere of what we do to do business is really what's meaningful, because if we have the power to do good in this world, then there's no reason we shouldn't. And Truckers Against Trafficking, I don't want to give too much away about what Laura is going to be sharing with us, but they work to train drivers, professional drivers, to be able to identify the signs of trafficking, and that could take several different forms, as Laura is going to share with us, so that they can communicate to groups that are positioned with law enforcement to let them know that this is occurring so that those victims can be safely recovered and returned to their families. And it is having a tangible, real impact on our communities around this country. And it would be a wonderful, wonderful thing if that could grow and grow. So we are very excited to have Laura here with us today. Also, on our chat, because I know there are going to be questions that come up during Laura's presentation. We have Molly Griffiths also with Truckers Against Trafficking, who's able to answer any questions that you may have that come up through Laura's presentation. This may be a hard presentation for some of you to watch because she's going to deal with some real world stuff happening to women, children, even men around this country that is real. So that's okay. That means you care. That means you're a human being. If it did not have that impact on you, then I'd be worried. But Laura, can we go ahead and turn on her camera and her microphone? Bring her online with us. I hear her. I see her.
Yay.
Hi, Laura. How are you today?
Hi. I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having us. You guys are very technical. This is great. Love having the tech support. We don't always get that. So thank you.
No problem. If that makes you feel any better, Mark and I would not look this good without their help either. So, all right, here, let me go ahead and get
Laura's joining us from the great state of Michigan. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes, it is snowing here where I am in the mid-Michigan area. But I'm
Excellent.
from here originally. I lived in Denver for about 5 years, and enjoyed the mountains and the climate out there. But there's nothing like home. So
I understand. All right. Well, Laura, without further ado, we will, the floor is yours.
thank you. Yeah, again, thank you to the Infinit-I team for having us here today. Um, you know, we want to, as Craig mentioned, there might be some difficult parts of this presentation, and you know, we're going to be talking about a very real subject, and that involves sex trafficking, forced exploitation, rape, and so you know, as we're going through these slides, please know that all of this content will be handled in a professional manner. And we really hope that it stretches you and pushes you just a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because I think it's in those spaces where we learn what it is that we have to get engaged with and what we need to do in order to help make an impact. And so, speaking of that, my presentation today, we're going to give an overview of human trafficking 101, as we like to call it. We're going to tell you what TAT offers, how we work, and how we work with Infinit-I, and how to implement this training. And then really at the end, have that call to action. My goal today is that all of you, whether you are current or prospective customers or clients, if you've implemented the TAT training in the past or you've never heard of us, that all of us today will walk away in agreement that this is something that we can and should get involved with, and that you would be interested in reaching out and learning how your company can get involved. So next slide, please. So at our core, you know, TAT, I mentioned I lived in Denver for about 5 years. That's when I initially got hooked up with this organization. We are based in Denver, although we are all completely remote. We do not have a brick and mortar building, but we are a national anti-human trafficking organization, and we are really using targeted systems change and engaging the concept of bystander intervention to raise up a mobile army of transportation professionals that can assist law enforcement in the recognition and reporting of the crime of human trafficking in order to aid in the recovery of those victims and the arrest of perpetrators. Our training is provided at no cost. It's an easy lift for companies to implement, and it provides actionable strategies which are ultimately leading to the discovery and the disruption of human trafficking networks across North America. Next slide, please. In name, we are Truckers Against Trafficking, and that is how we got started, but we really are so much more. In 2019, we celebrated our 10th birthday as a nonprofit, and since the beginning days, we have scaled dramatically. We are now working in the bus and energy industries. We have expanded into Canada. We have replicated our model with an organization in Mexico. We have greatly expanded our state agency initiatives and are partnering with law enforcement across the United States, especially State Patrol. And we are working with leaders at the state level in all 50 states. We have also grown our shipping partners program. So, right, that is leveraging the relationships that shippers and manufacturers have with the carriers that are moving their product and saying, you know, hey, this anti-trafficking training really aligns with our corporate social responsibility or sustainability goals. And so we would like to encourage anybody that moves product for us to be trained in this material. And so what we've found is that by aligning with this and, you know, being able to go to those shipping partners and say, you know, hey, our company is TAT trained, that's actually brownie points. It's not only the right thing to do, but we're starting to see more of these organizations really look for carriers that have that distinction. Next slide, please. So we want to define human trafficking. Even though state-sanctioned ownership of another human being is no longer legal, human trafficking is indeed modern-day slavery, and it is the exploitation of human beings through force, fraud, or coercion for the purposes of either commercial sex. You can think prostitution, stripping, pornography, brothels, and most typically pimps, as well as forced labor or labor trafficking. So you can think of sweatshops, agricultural fields, domestic servitude, construction work, nail salons, illicit massage parlors. Anytime that there are workers not being paid or being unfairly compensated, or those that are being held against their will, this is labor trafficking, this is human trafficking. And we have to remember that in all of these cases, this activity is being driven by a third party, by that trafficker, the victimizer. This is somebody who is in control of someone else and making a profit off of their back. And these victims find themselves in situations, unfortunately, that they literally cannot get out of. Next slide, please. So when we talk about human trafficking, the issue of human smuggling almost always comes up. And these terms are often incorrectly used interchangeably, which does sometimes cause some confusion, but we want to definitely differentiate these two crimes. Smuggling is a crime against a country's immigration law. This happens when someone illegally transports another person into a country where they do not have permission to enter, usually for a large fee. Movement does not have to be required in the case of trafficking. So when we talk about trafficking, a lot of times people assume movement, right? Across the state border, across the national border, and that's just not the case. You may have, for instance, someone that has paid somebody to them get across a border. In doing so, that person and that smuggler have both participated in the crime of smuggling. But if you get to your final destination and that smuggler turns to me and says, "Okay, Laura, you paid me $3,000. I got you safely across the border, but actually now you're in debt for another $7,000 or $5,000, or until you work off X amount of money. I'm not going to give you your freedom." You've now become a victim of human trafficking. And you have to consider the vulnerabilities of people that are crossing borders. The first vulnerability is that they likely do not know the language. They come to this country typically without any kind of documents. They are fleeing, literally fleeing for their life in most cases. Poverty, violence, dictators. And so smugglers and traffickers know that these people might put up with certain treatment that other people may not, because they are so desperate to leave their situation. All of these tie into vulnerabilities when we're talking about not only human trafficking, but also human smuggling. The thing that I'd like to point out, if you take nothing else away from this, it's that trafficking does not need to involve movement. It can, but for instance, we had worked with a survivor a few years ago, unfortunately, that was trafficked by her own father when he allowed men to come to their garage and rape her in exchange for money. There was no movement in that case, but it absolutely was human trafficking. Next slide, please. So we often think, when we talk about human trafficking, I think a lot of times people have seen the movie Taken, and they think that there's some kind of kidnapping that needs to take place, or that's how it always happens, a young girl or somebody gets kidnapped away from her family and is then taken somewhere and forced into this life. And while that certainly can happen, without a doubt, more commonly, a trafficker knows their victim. There's some kind of pre-existing relationship. They have groomed that victim over a period of weeks or months. And there are no locked doors, there are no chains, there's no abduction that needs to take place in order for them to, unfortunately, exploit their victims. Traffickers rely on the use of force, fraud, and coercion to keep their victims under their control. Force can be anything and everything you could think of, from one-off beatings to brutal assaults. Victims can be raped, gang raped, forced into drug addiction, mutilated, tortured, even killed. Fraud consists of false employment offers, even false romantic interest. We might have, young person that's looking to get out of a situation or looking to make a fresh start in a new city, and they answer an ad on a job board that talks about this exciting job in some far off place, either as a waitress or a model, or, "Oh, you're so beautiful, please come and work for me. I'll set you up in this apartment. I have a bus ticket for you waiting at the local bus station. Meet me in New York or LA or whatever in 3 days, and everything will be perfect. We'll get you right to work." And to someone who is desperate or vulnerable, or who has been groomed to think that they can trust this person, this sounds like a great opportunity. And so they follow through on this, but when they show up and meet their trafficker, they realize that what they have signed up for could not be further from the reality of their situation. But without a doubt, coercion is the most powerful tool that a trafficker has to keep their victims under their control. And this consists of the threats to life and safety of not only the victim, but that victim's family member. You could have, again, an undocumented person. This trafficker may say, well, if you don't do what I'm telling you to do, I'm going to call the police and you'll get deported. Or to a young mother who has a young child somewhere, and that trafficker has, potentially groomed or provided some sort of stability for this victim. The victim trusts them, and then all of a sudden, one day something changes, and they say, well, if you don't do this, I know where your kid goes to school, or I know where their daycare is. I'll kill your child, or I'll go kill your family. You've given me all these details about your family, and I know where they all live, and so if you don't do this, there's going to be repercussions. Here, we like to point out that force, fraud, or coercion only need to be proved in an adult human trafficking case. Anytime you have a minor, anybody that's under the age of 18 that is involved in a commercial sex act, that person is automatically a victim of human trafficking and is in need of services. This is particularly important, I think, for everybody to understand. These victims are not always going to self-identify as victims, right? If you've never been abducted, if you have complete trust in this person that turns out to be exploiting you, but you think that they're, this boyfriend, or they've provided all of this clothing or food or shelter for you, you're not going to identify as a victim of human trafficking. And so it doesn't matter if that person that's being sold is smiling or appears like they want to be there. Especially if it's a child, that young person needs somebody to stand up for him or her and do what they cannot to help them get out of that situation. Next slide, please. So in order to understand this crime better, let's break it down into three simple truths. The first is that slavery still exists. Like I stated previously, at one time there was state-sanctioned slavery in our nation. And while that is now illegal, it's illegal to own another human being, the realities of this crime show that human traffickers enslave, torture, and profit off of their victims on a routine basis. Next slide, please. This will help to give us an idea of the scope of this crime. There are 40 million victims estimated of human trafficking worldwide, and this generates over $150 billion a year in annual illicit profits for these traffickers. This is why they're doing it. It's about making money. The Human Trafficking Hotline reports that trafficking is happening in all 50 states. There is no state where this crime does not occur, and this includes the provinces in Canada. We know it's happening in every single province. Certainly there are plenty of adult victims, but thousands of children are at risk for being prostituted in North America each year. Just as we find inherent racism in so many places, there is inherent racism in prostitution, and thus also in sex trafficking. Disproportionately, victims of human trafficking are women and girls of color. And unfortunately, disproportionately, the buyer of these women and girls, the buyers are white men. So combating human trafficking is just another way that we can help to push back against inherent racism that exists in many places in our society. And then finally, just to bring the reality of this crime home, this is very sobering, but the national nonprofit Polaris, which runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline, reports that some victims may be forced to have sex up to 20 times per day. And truly that should read raped up to 20 times a day, because that is what we're talking about. Unfortunately, on a call of this size, we've got 71, people on this call. The reality is, sadly, that probably most of us, if not all of us, know someone, whether it's a colleague or a friend of a friend or a family member, that has been the victim of some kind of sexual assault. I want you to think about that person and what that one incident did to shatter their sense of security, to just really upend their entire life. Now imagine if that was happening to you once a day, or 5 times a day, or 10 or 20 times a day. Just the sheer amount of trauma and disassociation that is involved with that type of activity. That is the level of trauma and abuse that these trafficking victims are having to endure. And it's really because of them that we do this work. Next slide, please. I've mentioned this a couple times, but we want to talk about vulnerabilities. Traffickers prey upon vulnerabilities, and they frequently target children. They use their hopes, their dreams, their insecurities, their fears, their immaturity as weapons, unfortunately, to exploit their bodies for profit. Again, while anybody can be susceptible to the forceful and manipulative methods that traffickers use, we have to especially consider kids that are in the foster care system, or even young adults that have recently aged out of the system. We also need to look at runaways, homeless, young people especially, but anyone that's experiencing homelessness, kids in the LGBTQ community, and really anybody who comes from an abusive home especially, they are particularly at risk. The vulnerabilities that traffickers prey upon are exacerbated by poverty, racial discrimination, migration status, and fear of law enforcement. All of these factors, again, contribute to disproportionately victimizing people of color. But what I would like to add is that this crime truly knows no racial, gender, or socioeconomic bounds when it comes to not only who could be the victim, but who could be the trafficker. Next slide, please. And this is the second truth I'd like to share, and that's even though we might have a preconceived idea of what a pimp or a trafficker may look like, or some idea that might come to mind when you hear that word, the word pimp, the reality is traffickers can be anyone. Next slide, please. You will see a snapshot of folks that have been arrested recently in the US on human trafficking related charges. We have an Army vet, a former firefighter, a teacher, and the woman in the top right was India's Deputy Consul General for the state of New York. She was charged with trafficking her housekeeper and fraudulently obtaining that staff member's visa. So truly, I can't see all of your lovely faces on the call today, but I think there's a representation of all of us in this picture. We need to get away from thinking that a trafficker, looks like one specific type of person or would fit in a box, and the reality is it's just not that way. Next slide, please. This is the third and final truth I'd like to share, and that's while we don't want to believe that this is happening in our own neighborhood, we think it's, it's just something that happens in a far off place. The reality is human trafficking is a local crime. It is happening in your neighborhood, and it is happening in your industry, this industry. And I'd like to share a case study about that. You may have seen my dog just jump up on my couch. That is Jasper. He may move again before the time is over, but anyway, he makes an appearance on all my webinars, so I apologize, but that's 2021, right? Working from home. Next slide, please. So this is Laura Sorensen and Aldair Hodza. Now, they made national news a couple of years ago when they were stopped at a Virginia truck stop. They had parked their RV at this truck stop, and law enforcement was called to the scene. They were allowed inside of this RV, and they began to have an exchange with these two. And while they were having this conversation, the state trooper noticed that there was a third party, a young woman, not a child, but a young adult woman, and she looked disheveled, malnourished. She would not make eye contact with law enforcement. And at some point during this conversation that was taking place, one of the troopers was able to make eye contact with that young lady, and she bugged her eyes out, like, get me out of this situation. That trooper picked up on that cue, asked to speak with that young woman outside of the RV. As soon as the door was closed, that young lady began to weep. She said she had been taken and kidnapped out of the state of Iowa about 2 weeks prior. She had been forced to prostitute at truck stops and other locations, again, ending in Virginia over the course of that approximate 2-week time frame. She hadn't had anything to eat or drink in days. This is graphic, I apologize. She was truly being tortured by these two. They were heating up metallic instruments on the stove of the RV and inflicting wounds on her body and then spraying chlorine bleach into those wounds. I mentioned coercion earlier. They had actually slit a dog's throat in front of this young lady and made her watch that poor animal bleed out and die, and said, if you don't do what we're telling you to do, this is going to be you and this is going to be your family. No one back home in Iowa actually even considered her missing, because these two were regularly making her call home to her family and say that nothing was out of the ordinary, you know, whatever, she was on a spontaneous road trip or whatever it was. Again, she was not a minor. So her family never even considered her missing. That same day in the truck stop, she told police investigators that she was forced to perform sex acts not only on Hodza, but also another unknown male inside that RV at the truck stop. And that arrangement had been made through a Craigslist ad. So this is what human trafficking can look like in our nation. This doesn't mean all of these cases are going to look the same, but this is what it can look like. And when I talk about this crime being in your backyard, again, this happened at a truck stop. Next slide, please. So in response to these realities, Truckers Against Trafficking began in 2009, and we exist to educate, equip, empower, and mobilize members of the trucking, bus, and again, energy industries to help us combat human trafficking just as part of their regular everyday jobs. Next slide, please. We recognized that the trucking industry, through your sheer numbers, the nature of your job, the extensive travels of these drivers, right, they can provide an extra set of eyes and ears for law enforcement in recovering victims and having traffickers arrested, especially since in the course of their everyday jobs, professional drivers are in places where these traffickers are exploiting their victims. We have to remember, all of us, whether we ever are in a truck stop or not, traffickers count on the general public believing that that person that's being sold or that person that appears like they're selling sex is there by choice and that they want to be there, and that we're not going to get involved because, you know, whatever reason or whatever idea we have about somebody who's just a prostitute, right? But that's just not the case. Imagine if every single driver understood this crime, knew what to look for, and knew how to immediately report it. How many victims could be recovered and how many traffickers could be arrested? We're talking about truck stops, rest areas, hotels, motels, city streets, right? Your folks don't have to be over the road drivers. This is something that local and regional folks can identify as well. We even have a success story. One of our Harriet Tubman Award winners was able to help a victim where he was delivering his load. He was approached by this victim at a place where he was delivering his load. So this needs to be on the radar of not only every single driver, but just every single person, I believe, in the United States. Next slide, please. So we have 3 goals, and the first is to saturate the trucking and related industries with our TAT materials. Next slide, please. This is just a snapshot of the many, again, free resources that we have to share with our partners. So the cornerstone of our training is a 27-minute training video. And this, again, has a human trafficking 101 component. It has, it features actually a survivor story of not only her exploitation, she was trafficked with her cousin, and how that came to be, and how it was a truck driver who noticed something at a truck stop that made a call that helped these young girls be recovered and a whole trafficking ring shut down. It features industry leaders talking about the reality of this, literally coming knocking on the doors of this industry, and what drivers can do to help, which is to call the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 1-888-373-7888. And this training video is available on the Infinit-I platform, and it's also available in DVD form. We can send you a link to download, and there are just so many other resources that we would love to get into the hands of your drivers if you decide to implement this. We have posters, we have window decals, we have wallet cards. And if you could go to the next slide, please. I would also love for everybody on the call today, regardless of what action you take moving forward, please download our free app, which is available on all of the app platforms. Just search Truckers Against Trafficking, and you can download this interactive app. We have case studies, we have red flags, and you can even make a tip to the national hotline right from that app. These screenshots might be a bit old. Actually, Molly just reminded me that these screenshots, we've updated since then, so it might look a little bit different, but it is a fantastic resource. And if your drivers have company issued devices, please either ask or automatically download this app onto their devices, or otherwise just encourage your people, everybody that you know, to download this app. Next slide, please. At the end of the day, if you take nothing else away, I know I'm throwing a lot of information at you today. It is so easy to get involved in this program. In 30 minutes or less, you can train your drivers and all of your employees, again, to recognize human trafficking and to know how to handle it. All you have to do is implement the TAT training video, pass out the TAT wallet card, the decals, get them to download the app, hang posters, right? Get all these other free resources that we will send to you. It doesn't matter how many drivers you have. If you have 15 or you have 1,500 or plus, we will get you these materials. And the final piece for us is to register as a TAT trained company on our website. You can go to trained.truckersagainsttrafficking.org and pull up a list of all of the different trucking, bus, and energy companies that have implemented our industry-specific training. And we would love for you to add those numbers to that growing list. It helps us measure our impact across the United States and North America, really, and is very helpful to our efforts. Next slide, please. We also partner with law enforcement to facilitate the investigation of human trafficking. We've co-created models with DOT offices that basically maximize the relationships and the opportunities that commercial motor vehicle enforcement officers have with the carriers and the drivers that they interact with, just to really work together. We firmly believe that trucking, law enforcement, the truck stop community, we all have to work together if we're going to close loopholes to traffickers and make sure that this crime cannot profit off of this industry. Next slide, please. Our third and final goal is to marshal the resources of our partners to combat this crime. And whether that's through their time, their experience, or their influence, our partners are really helping us to do this work. It is amazing to see the reception that this program has had within the industry. You know, I think as soon as you hear about it, it's like, okay, how can I implement this? What do I have to do? Of course, I'm going to make a stand and help my company be a part of this effort. Next slide, please. We truly could not do this work without the support of the industry. The logos that you see here, these are our gold and above level sponsors who have, you know, not only, again, trained their people, but have come alongside us and said, you know, this effort is so important and we want to help this work advance. This is how we can continue to make these materials, to provide them for free, and to do the work that we do. So we are very grateful for all of them. Next slide, please. The hopefully most exciting and uplifting thing that I will share with you today is that this program works. So to date, truck drivers alone have made nearly 2,700 calls to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And those calls have helped to identify nearly 1,300 victims of human trafficking here in the United States. That is huge when you consider that these are just truck drivers, right? Who know what to look for and are willing to make a call. This doesn't count calls to 911 or local non-emergency lines. These are only calls to the hotline, people who know about it, people who are willing to call and willing to change a life. We have now trained over 1 million people. That was one of the bright spots of 2020 for our organization in a year that was so trying and so hard. We had to, I mean, I'm sure like many of you, massive layoffs. We had to lay off a bunch of our staff. And, you know, it was really a tough year to try to figure out how do we make that digital pivot and continue to have impact. And I'm so grateful for every single person that has trained because we have now trained over 1 million people, which is just huge when you think about it. It's fantastic. But We know that there are millions more. So if there are any of you on the call today that have not implemented this training, please, please, please consider being a part of this work. Next slide, please. Yeah, another sobering statistic, the national hotline, again, where we are asking folks to make those calls. We do not take the tips, we do not run the hotline, we just point people to the national hotline, but they report that in the last 5 years, over 41% of the cases that truckers have reported have involved victims that are minors. These are children, children that are being forced into sexual exploitation. And you know, I think many of us on the call probably have kids, or we have nieces or nephews or grandchildren, or we just want to be helpful in our community. We don't want to see exploitation of anyone. This is why we need to get involved in this work. Obviously, we know there are adult victims as well, and they are just as worthy of having somebody make a call for them. But I think even adults, an adult woman or an adult man, a boy or a girl, everybody is somebody's child. Everybody is somebody's family member. And we need to do what we can to really look out for those that are most vulnerable and unfortunately being exploited. Next slide, please. Speaking of impact, we have seen lawmakers and different departments across the United States see the positive impact of the TAT training. And so now a number of states have either passed legislation or made administrative rule changes tying CDL issuance and renewal to the TAT training. So for instance, if you are in the states of Kansas or Arkansas, your drivers can neither obtain a new CDL nor renew their existing license without showing proof that they've been through this training. And so that is an official certificate that we have. Unfortunately, you know, we really recommend that this be done at the CDL school level. We think that makes a lot more sense to have entry-level CDL programs be pumping out this training. But we have options for people in any state. If you want your drivers to be certified, get in touch with us. It's the same training and quiz that's available on the Infinit-I platform, and we can get you the certificate that your drivers need. So it's kind of cool. It is. We're seeing people recognize that this training makes a difference and save lives, and that's really what it's all about. Next slide, please. When we talk about risk management, I think the biggest thing to take away is to consider how to make, I saw a comment at the very beginning, I was kind of looking at the chat, and somebody talked about safety culture starts at the top, right? And I think when you are talking about safety culture, this absolutely ties in to that. You want your drivers to be aware, you want them to know what to do, but I think more than anything, you don't want buyers on your payroll. You do not want people that are purchasing commercial sex on your payroll, and you want them to know that this is a real issue. And there is actually something called the No Human Trafficking on Our Roads Act, which was signed by President Trump a couple years ago. And it brings with it a lifetime ban on having a CDL if that CDL holder is found to be using a commercial motor vehicle in the crime of human trafficking. That could be transporting, that could be purchasing, it could be any number of things. And so you really need to make your people aware that not only is it just not the right thing to do, but it can absolutely impact employment and potentially having that CDL revoked for life. So make this part of the safety culture of your organization. Make TAT part of the fabric of your company, right? We want to take care of others. We want to be a company that does good beyond just getting our loads delivered on time and safely. So keep this initiative at top of mind, again, with the posters, with other resources that we routinely send out. Adopt an anti-trafficking in persons policy with a demand reduction focus. I know that that's a mouthful, but essentially it says no company work time or work product can be used to purchase commercial sex. We really see this as one of the risk management strategies in your organization, and we would again love to just set you up with all of these materials. Next slide, please. Um, a couple years ago, we created our Harriet Tubman Award. And this award is really meant to showcase and highlight the fantastic work that is being done by boots on the ground. So we want to know, have your drivers made calls that have resulted in somebody being recovered or prevented human trafficking from taking place? If your drivers make a call, have them report that up, whether it's to a safety director or to dispatch or whatever that looks like within your organization. Have them filter that information up to you so that you can say, okay, this is something that we need to look into. Let's alert TAT. Let's see if they can use their law enforcement partners across the US to vet this information and see if we can find out what happened to this victim. Did our driver really help to save someone's life? We're not always going to know that, and that's okay. But in those instances where we do, we have this Harriet Tubman Award every year, and we take nominations for this. It comes with a $2,500 cash prize, an all expense paid trip to the Indy 500 for the winner and a guest, and a beautiful award celebration. This is all sponsored by our partners at Protective Insurance. A beautiful gala. They're presented this beautiful award, and we get to hear their story of how they were able to help somebody in need. So if that's something that you think might help motivate your folks, we know that's not why people make the call. They do it again because it's the right thing to do. But know that this exists, and know that we would so have your drivers again filter that information up to you. Next slide, please. Ultimately, all of these efforts come back to these men and the millions of men and women like them that are, again, out there diligently and safely delivering products across our country, across our world. All of these folks here are change makers. They have all been a part of making a direct act that helped to either recover or help change the life of a victim. But I'd like to focus your attention to the man on the right. His name is Kevin Kimmel. He was at that same truck stop that Laura Sorensen and Alder Hodza had pulled their RV into. And he was doing his paperwork. He noticed different men coming and going from that RV. He already thought it was weird that it was parked back in the truck area. But it wasn't until he looked up again, he thought he saw a young woman peek her head out of the window of that RV, only to have a black curtain pushed in its place. She was pulled back in, looked like there was a commotion going on inside, that he knew he had to make the call. And so it was his call that resulted in those state troopers showing up, separating that young woman from her traffickers. Laura Sorensen and Alder Hodza were sentenced to 40 and 41 years in prison thanks to his call, and that young lady is back home and safe with her family. She absolutely considers Kevin her guardian angel, and he considers himself a trucker against trafficking, but I would love for him to tell you in his own words. We have a short video, which fingers crossed will work. Let's see if we can get that queued up.
I finished up night deliveries early in the morning. Ended up finding a truck stop about 40 miles outside of Richmond, Virginia to take my 10-hour break. So I was filling out my paperwork, and 2 slats over there was an RV. This one was back in the truck lot, and it didn't look typical. It was kind of beat up, had black curtains. I saw a middle-aged man walk out and knock on the door. Well, the door opens, he goes in, and I'm still filling my paperwork out. And I looked over and I saw what looked to me to be a young girl look out. And then she vanished. Like she was pulled away from the window and the curtain was pushed back over. And I thought, this is a bad situation here. Nothing was reminding me of what a family situation would be. And I thought about it another couple minutes and I said, this could be something pretty ominous. And so I just got the smartphone out, gave him a call and told him where I was and what I thought might be going on. And not 5 minutes later, 2 sheriff vehicles and 2 state troopers pulled in. And from there, kind of unwound. I feel real good about being able to put 2 people in prison that don't need to be out floating around.
Traffickers have done an amazing job convincing us that she's just a prostitute and that we should just turn and look the other way. And this is a really highly effective business model for them, isn't it? Because we're all looking away, and they and the buyers are effectively raping America's women and children and making a ton of money while doing it. And they've also convinced us that this problem is too big, too dark, and too heavy for us to do anything about it. But they are wrong. If traffickers count on our ignorance and our apathy, that nobody knows and nobody cares enough to do anything about this, then we must know and we must care. And time again, history has borne this out. History has shown that when good men and good women do care and do know and get involved, they can actually change a person's life.
Truckers Against Trafficking is like the glue that's going to bond the industry. You guys are the ones that are putting out the materials, you're putting out all the information. Everybody's got smartphones now, everybody's on Facebook. I mean, just the sheer barrage of the information has done nothing but good. When they go through the orientation, they see the video, they get the decals, they also get the wallet cards. And the wallet cards is just a simple way to refresh your memory about what it is that's going on out there. If you see certain traits, this is the number to call. You know, at the end of the day, you get your load there, you get it there safe, you get it delivered on time, and maybe you save somebody's life. What I've learned is human trafficking is a huge problem. You know, and now I have an understanding there's an oppressor, there's the oppressed, and they're not doing this to make money for college or whatever your thought might be. They're doing this to stay alive because there's somebody on the other end of it forcing it.
That's the power of the trucking industry. That's the power of someone who has the courage to take a second look. And that's what trucking is able to do. That's what taxi drivers or bus drivers or law enforcement personnel or hotel workers, whoever you may be, wherever you are, if you take that second look, then what you're able to do by getting involved is you are effectively helping to change a life. And that's what we're asking for. You know, Kevin Kimmel had the courage to look again. Kevin Kimmel recognized, you know what, there's something not right. And he had the courage to make a call and get involved. And now he's helped unlock her pathway back to freedom. No matter what it may look like on the outside, no matter what it may seem like that moment in that parking lot or wherever you may be, that person is a human being. She's so much more. She is not just a victim in that moment, but she is a survivor. She is an overcomer. She is somebody that has a future. And we need the courage to look again. We need the courage to see that our actions in this moment will unlock the path to her freedom.
Well, I got a call from the state police. They wanted to know if I could release my phone number to her, and I said, yeah, that'd be fine. And I think she was still in the hospital. And she told me how much she appreciated it. And she said something to the regards of a guardian angel, and it's like, no, that's not the case, you know. I just made a phone call, and I'm glad I could help you, and I hope you go on and have a healthy and happy life. Try to put this thing behind you. We need to get back to a place where if somebody is in need, that we step up to it. There's a lot of things in life that aren't so obvious. This isn't one of them. My name's Kevin Kimmel, and I'm a trucker against trafficking.
So that is, I mean, I have seen that video probably, I don't know, 1,000 times in the course of my my time with TAT. I've been here 8 years, and it still brings me to tears every single time, because we have to remember that these are lives. These are real lives out there that are in jeopardy, that are being exploited. And you know, you heard Kevin. He said all I did was make a phone call. right? He was made aware of the signs. And in other interviews that I've seen of him, this case made national news. And that's actually how we first heard about it. But in other interviews that he's done, you know, he said, I wasn't really sure I knew what I was looking at, but I knew something about it wasn't right. And there were these red flags. And so I think to encourage you and for you to encourage your drivers, you don't have to be right when you're calling the hotline. They have told us we would rather people call and be wrong than not to call and have that victim continue to endure a life of exploitation. And so when your drivers call, they will speak with a trained operator. This hotline is operated 24/7. They can explain the red flags that they have witnessed, and that operator will help them decide if it is human trafficking or no, it's probably not. If it is, they will either ask the caller to hang up and call 911, or they will relay that information to their local law enforcement partners on the ground. The other great thing about the hotline is that it exists to provide victim services and connect victims to services all across the country. So on the slide I shared a couple slides above this one, one of our success stories is Arian Taylor, and he was the one that was delivering his load, and it was 3:30 in the morning, and he got a knock on his door, and it was this young woman who had no shoes, no cell phone, no identification. She had just fought off her would-be trafficker. He had dumped her in this parking lot, this area where nobody else was. And she was desperate for help and to get home. And so because he had been trained, they called the hotline together, and the hotline was able to arrange for a prepaid cab ride to get that young lady to a local shelter who kept her safe overnight. The hotline also arranged a train ticket for her to get home back to Colorado from California the next day. And so victims anywhere in the nation can call and get access to services through that hotline. So it's a fantastic resource. Just briefly, I mentioned Arian Taylor. I'm actually going to be interviewing him for our podcast in just a couple hours. We're going to be recording this episode, but I would encourage you, in addition to downloading our app, search any podcast platform for Driving Freedom, or maybe Molly can put a direct link in the chat. This is so cool. Thank you so much, Molly. I would never be able to do all this by myself. But a link to the podcast on our website. This is a fantastic additional resource. Once your drivers have been trained, find a way to help us promote this podcast. They're 20 to 30 minute episodes. They are specific for drivers. They're supposed to be short, but content rich, audio training opportunities for folks to, again, just understand deeper and deeper, continue to peel back the layers of this onion, to understand the nuances of this crime. We've interviewed survivors, we've interviewed truck drivers that have made the call or that have seen things, that have had their mind open, their eyes and hearts changed because of this training. One of my good friends, a driver, he shares a very powerful story about how, 10 years ago, he had this knock on his door at 2:30 in the morning at a truck stop, and he's like, I knew what it was. And I rolled down my window and it was raining, and there was this young woman. He said, I could tell she couldn't have been more than 15 years old. And she was knocking on my door, soliciting, right? Asking me if I wanted company. And in the rain, in the middle of the night, he says, I yelled at her, get away from me. I don't want anything to do with you. Rolled his window up, tried to go back to sleep, and was just upset. It's before he was ever TAT trained. He came to see the training, to understand really what he had witnessed, what he had seen. And he said, my heart just broke because it was a missed opportunity. And he said, I know now without a doubt that girl, 15 years old, was not out there by choice. She was there because she was being exploited by somebody else. And what did I do? I told her to go away. And so he said, it haunts me, but what it does is it also motivates him, because now he is on a mission to not only tell other drivers about this and get other people involved, but to be on the lookout for those potential victims. Specific to those truck stop and rest area opportunities, those red flags are anytime you see a minor that you believe is engaged in commercial sex, or anytime you believe you're witnessing somebody under the control of a pimp, regardless of the age or gender of that victim. So that might look like an SUV or a van pulling back into the truck lot, and 4 or 5 women or girls, or again, even boys or young men, getting out of that vehicle and going truck to truck at that truck stop. Huge red flag. Try to get make and model of the car, pictures of the license plate, description of the occupants of the vehicle, of the driver, right? Date, time, location, all of this. And all of this information is in our training video, so I don't need to say it all right now, but just some high level red flags. It's just, that is how important this work is. And so in closing, I would encourage all of you to watch that training video in some form or fashion. You can preview it if you want on our website. Just go to truckersagainsttrafficking.org, scroll down a little bit. It's right on our homepage. But please understand the signs, be willing to report human trafficking if you suspect it. Implement this training within your organization. Make TAT part of the safety culture of your company. I didn't spend too much time on it, but try to understand the demand aspect of this. And that's that if there were no buyers of commercial sex, there would be no victims of human trafficking, because that trafficker is the middleman, and they recognize that because there is a demand for this, there's an opportunity for them to make money and for them to exploit in order to do so. We know that there will never be enough willing supply to meet the demand that exists for commercial sex. And so that's why this is such a profitable business for traffickers, because they can prey, again, on all those vulnerabilities that we touched on. They prey on those vulnerabilities. They just coerce them into this, and then they're the ones making the profit. The victims are the ones experiencing the trauma, and the buyers are often just unaware of what's really going on. So we have a whole list. Molly, I'm going to tap you again. You probably already know what I'm going to say, but we have another video called Addressing Demand, Man to Man. And it is a conversation starter that is not a training. It's not a human trafficking training, but it's sort of like a next level. Again, peeling back the onion. This is a great video resource, and it's got some companion resources that go with it, but especially for men, to engage a conversation with the other guys in your life about the link between the demand for commercial sex and the crime of sex trafficking. And so that's another video to take a look at. Next, support us if you can. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about the other ways that you can spread this word. Can you encourage your drivers to download that app? Can you share the podcast? If you do become a TAT trained company and you're reporting your numbers to us, every quarter you'll be on our training list, and every quarter we send out what we call our training touch. And that is just either a success story or an impact graphic or some other little piece of information that we share with all the training companies, so that you can choose. You're not obligated to use it, but you can choose to say, okay, we're going to include this in our newsletter, or we're going to blast this out to all of our drivers on their devices, or we're going to put this on our Marlin screens or on our social media, or whatever it is. But that is another way for you to help your people keep this at top of mind, which is really what that's about. And then lastly, please, please, please spread the word, not only to your company or your colleagues, your peers in the industry, but take this information home to your dinner tables. Especially our kids, our family members, they need to understand the realities of human trafficking. Of course, age appropriate timeline and conversation, but they need to hear about this from people that they can trust, and they need to understand that this is unfortunately a reality, especially on the internet. We know with COVID, I mean, depending on which state you're in right now, our kids aren't going to school. They aren't having that support system of teachers for those that are vulnerable or come from abusive home situations where there's lots of other drama going on. But it also means that our kids, even though they were already on the internet way too much, now they have even more unsupervised time online. And we have seen traffickers using social media, pretty much all of the platforms, to try to recruit these kids, these young adults. We have a whole series of videos that we created during the height of the pandemic, mid-year last year, C19 Impact. Molly, if you want to link that too. But we created a whole series of short videos, and one of them is on sugaring, or this idea of sugar daddies that try to recruit online and try to start up these relationships with women of all ages. I actually had one of my friends, 35-year-old woman, some creeper approached her on Instagram and was like, hey, do you need a sugar daddy? You're so beautiful. Like, let's start this relationship. And she screenshotted it and sent it to me and was like, this is such a joke. But imagine if you were a kid who was vulnerable, who didn't have mom or dad, right, in your life supporting you. All of these other things that we've talked about, how you might fall victim to that. So anyway, our kids especially need to understand this crime. We would give our training video a PG-13 rating. Again, it's available on our homepage. If you've got teenagers, please watch the video first. I mean, it's nothing explicit, but watch it first, screen it, and then decide, you know, is this something that I could show my kids just to help them understand trafficking? You will hear the story of a 15 and 16-year-old pair of cousins that were trafficked and what they had to live through. And I think it's an eye-opening testimony for kids especially to hear. So next slide, please. I know I have shared so much information today. It's one of the challenges. We love to talk about this work and to talk about the resources, but we have really only scratched the surface in this 45 minutes to an hour that I've been able to present. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, we all want our careers, we all want our lives to mean something, to leave a legacy, right? To go beyond just the bottom line. But not everybody is in a position to do that when it relates to this work. But if you are in transportation, you have the opportunity to be part of a ripple effect that we will never see the full scope of. We just never will, and that's okay. We don't need to. We just need all of us to, right, be tossing our pebbles into that and just expanding these ripples across this great wide opportunity of awareness, of education, of prevention. You know, I got into this work because I actually heard a missionary speak about 15 years ago, and I had never considered, she was talking about human trafficking on a global scale, you know, coffee production, chocolate production, rubber production, clothing and textiles. Then of course, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, all these things. And it was like my mind was blown open with, you know, oh, I'd never considered who makes my clothing or produces the coffee that I drink every morning, or all of these different things, and started to become aware of where I was in that global supply chain, right? This is an opportunity. Truckers Against Trafficking is an opportunity to engage supply chain, engage transportation for social good. That's what we're doing. This is about changing and saving lives. And I'm going to stop talking because I can take some additional questions, but if I leave you with nothing else, I hope that you have learned more about this and that you have been motivated to take action. That might look different for everybody on the call. Thank you to those that are already TAT training. We'd love to hear from you. I think maybe in the comments, if you've implemented the
Please.
training. Yeah, thank you again for having us today.
Thank you, Laura, so much. It's such, I've now seen this presentation twice. It's impacted me the same way both times. I travel out and visit with many of our clients in the field. And I will be the first person to say that even though we do a lot of safety training in a year, that does not mean that all drivers necessarily find the training pleasurable or are grateful for having gone through it. The exception to that is the Truckers Against Trafficking training. That is the one that we receive the strongest positive response from the driver field because, as you said, drivers have families. Even if they don't have children themselves, there's someone in their life that does. And this is the one that we have seen them respond most strongly to, be grateful to be included in. So for those of you that are on the call today that may not believe that this is something that drivers will appreciate, they overwhelmingly do. And I've even seen groups that have implemented ongoing training on this subject. So even though this month is National Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and they do Truckers Against Trafficking training more than one time a year. so that they keep those things refreshed. They keep people up to date on what to look for so that they're observant and vigilant. And it really is tremendous. I mean, if we could take that 1,296 victims recovered to 5,000 to 10,000. I mean, what kind of an impact? That would be just tremendous. And we have some current mobile Army members I can see on chat that are chiming in, but everyone on this call has the potential to be that. As has been mentioned, the Truckers Against Trafficking training, that is included automatically for all of our clients in your video library. You could assign that out immediately. Just put Truckers Against Trafficking into the search and that content will come up. For those of you who are not clients but would like to take advantage of it, you could use the free trial that we have available as an opportunity to send out this training to your field force so that you can get that reporting back, that you can then get the certificates that your drivers may need in the states where it's appropriate. You can also get that video directly from Truckers Against Trafficking themselves. But this is a tremendous opportunity that has been placed before us by Truckers Against Trafficking to be able to go and do good in the world. And I know that the transportation industry, it's a very proud industry. They are very cognizant of the impact of the work that they do. They are very proud to be able to do it. And this is really just another facet of that. So in 2020 has been a tremendous year drawing that into focus of just how much this country needs truckers.
Yes.
Because your grocery store doesn't refill without a trucker, and your toilet paper does not arrive without a trucker, nor does your hand sanitizer. So this is just another step forward in empowering your fleet. So we recommend that you seriously consider it. Again, we have been a partner with this organization and will continue to be a partner with this organization. Would like to open the floor to any questions that anyone has. I know that there may be things that you don't want to ask online. I understand that. Laura's contact information is on here, but if there are things that you would like to ask of Laura now, please fire that up in chat. We would love to hear from you while those questions are percolating. Taking action. That's what this is all about, guys. Talk without action is just that. It's talk. So this last 4 days has been about learning and then going out and applying that to your organization. And this is one more facet of that. So take action on what you have learned today. Take action on what you have learned in the past 3 days. Oh, someone's asking for your email again. Let me backtrack. There you go. Stare at the bottom underneath her photo. Take action on what you've learned. That is the only way that you're going to make a positive impact for your organization and an even greater positive impact on our world. And we have the chance to help steer our society in the direction to be the society that we want it to be. All right. A couple things here before we wrap up. Coming soon, we do have another boot camp already scheduled based off of feedback that we received for both November and for February. We've heard you, and we have put together a boot camp specifically focusing on recruiting and retaining your drivers. Now, to do that, you're like, Craig, who are you going to get to talk? We've enlisted some great minds. First and foremost, Jeremy Reamer, Driver Reach. They're going to be our partner for this event. I love hearing Jeremy talk. He is a ball of energy, and he's got a very high level of passion for what he does. So I am so excited for him to share with us. Ellen Voy with Women in Trucking will also be joining us. I've had the opportunity to listen to her speak before, and she is going to rewire your brains on how you are recruiting. What is your recruiting marketing saying about the people that you want to bring in the door? Because the potential is that you are leaving people on the table that are not responding to the messages that you're sending. So I'm very excited for her to be able to share her expertise with us. And then a dear friend of our organization, Dan Baker, is going to be here to talk with us about creating that culture within your organization that makes people want to work with you, but also stay. So to register for this event, you can actually go ahead and already do that at the link that is there in the corner. Lindsay, could you share that in chat so people can just click on it and take themselves over? So you can go ahead and get the calendar reminders and so forth already in your calendar so that you can join us. This is going to be the last week in February. So that will be February 23rd to 26th. Same bat time, same bat channel. But we would love to have you join us again in February as well. In addition to this, we do have, getting ahead of myself here, our code word of the day. Of course, it's action. Code word of the day is action. That's what everyone on this call today needs to be doing once we're done. Email your code word of the day if you are participating in our code word contest to lindsay.presley@verticalag.com. Again, you have to have all four code words submitted in the drawing for the Amazon Echo Show 8. And then from those people that are eligible, we will pull a winner randomly and send that your way. All right. And then a couple additional things on the horizon for you. We talked in November about new HR content. That went live in the month of January. That is already in the content library for those of you who are already clients. They are called HR Minutes. So if you search by that name, you'll be able to pull up those 20 new courses that have been built out. And these courses have been arranged to tackle a couple different subjects. We know that there are some of you on this call, you wear many hats, including that HR hat, and you are having to create a HR program just as you had to create a safety program, often from the confines of an empty file cabinet you were gifted by your predecessor. So this helps steer how you set up HR policies, but there's also content that can be shared with drivers on different subjects, sexual harassment, and so forth. So take a look at those. SCORM compliance, our platform, our i3 system is going to be SCORM compliant in the very, very near future. We are testing that functionality right now. That means for those of you out there that have SCORM compliant content that you have created, that can be uploaded into our platform and be a fully reportable item so that you can contain all your training in one place. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Mark Ray has a webinar coming up on the 4th of February focused on driver wellness. Mark, did you want to talk a little bit about that with us?
I do, but before I do that, I want to thank Laura, Molly, and Truckers Against Trafficking. We have millions of Kevins out there that are heroes waiting to be trained to get this information, to accept the reality of what you just covered. It was a powerful presentation. Thank you. Yes, we have a wellness on the 4th. We're going to go over how you can help prepare your driving staff to pass their DOT physical. Everybody's on the wellness kick right now. Nick is out of Waterloo, Iowa, and he's got some exciting ideas on how we can do that. So please consider participating in that. And thank you again, Laura and Molly.
We will be sending out more information about how to participate in that webinar as we get a little bit closer to that day so that you can sign up to attend that. I don't have a link for our attendees today to sign up for that. All right, looks like, Laura, you have overwhelmed people with information. We did not have anyone that had any additional questions that they wanted to ask online. We had questions about our depositions. What we're looking at doing with that training that Peyton did yesterday so well is editing that down and turning that into a training item in on our catalog. So those of you that would like to have an item that you can assign over time, we're working on that. Until we have that available, the replay of that entire session from yesterday is up on the replay link that we shared, so that you can access that, share that with other people on your team so that they can watch that. But we are looking to make that a training item. That is something that we've noticed a demand for. Lindsay's got the link there for the replays in the chat box. So please avail yourself of that. The replay of this session will be up, should be this afternoon. If not this afternoon, then definitely by Monday. So that if you would like to share this session and Laura's information about Truckers Against Trafficking with other members of your team that were not able to join us today, absolutely please do so. That's why it is there. Other than that, gang, now is the time to take this information, make it your own, implement it with your organization. Mark, do you have any final thoughts for us before we send our folks on their way?
Oh, it's been quite a week, and obviously thank everyone for participating. We've covered from a number of different angles this concept of a safety culture and how important it is in a risk assessment to the insurers as well as the litigators that are defending us. We heard from Amber, who was a breath of fresh air on her program up in Denver, and putting that into practice and seeing the results, and obviously Laura, Molly, and the Truckers Against Trafficking kind of giving us a sobering thought about some of the issues that we can make an impact on. And it's been quite a week. So thank you very much. And it's been a blessing being a part of this week.
I've got a question about the NATME certificates that we send out.
Yes.
Those will be generated and sent out to the appropriate attendees at the end of the event. How it works is if you joined us for all 4 days, that is good for 2 credits from NATME for your NATME recertification. If you joined us for just 2 days, that is equal to 1 credit. So if you did 2, 3, you'll get 1 credit. If you did 4 days, you get 2. If you did 1 day, unfortunately, that is not something that NATME approved for credit. But those certificates will be generated and sent out. So be on the lookout for those as well. And we'll also have some follow-up communications. Those of you who have been responding to the surveys that we have been sending out, thank you so much. We do read your feedback. We do use that to dictate future events. So please respond to those. Let us know the things that you would like to see us talk more in depth on after our recruiting and retention session. That's what we're going to focus on exclusively with that one. But we do have opportunities for future content presentations, and we know a lot of folks. Good people know good people. So we would love to get more of these folks introduced to you so they can share what they know and how they do and how they're making us all better. Excellent. All right. Well, Laura, thank you. Molly, thank you so much. Lindsay on chat, thank you so much for keeping us on track. We could not have done this event without you today. We appreciate you. Everyone on our call, thank you for joining us. Without you, this event is meaningless. And we hope that you have some great information that you're going to go use with your groups. We're very excited to hear what you want to do. We're super pleased if we can help you achieve it. Most importantly, though, be safe out there, everyone. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk again real soon. Thank you.
Thank you.